All right, I think we are live. Welcome back, everybody. Let's jump right into it. All right, so what do we want to achieve today? We want to create a new Laravel app, install filaments, roles, and permissions, and do a few preparation before we start coding. All right, I hope everything is working fine. All right, let's jump into it. I will be using Laravel here to create a new site. It will be no starter kit, and I will call it CrewSync. Give it a few seconds. While we're doing that, let's make sure PHP Storm is up to date. Everything seems in order. All right, let's go to our terminal. Let's go to Herd and the newly created project. Let's generate self-signed certificate using Herd Secure. That seems to be in order. Let's get a browser. So that should be CrewSync.test. Everything seems to be in order. Let's open our project. And we got it under Herd. Let's give a few seconds to do the indexing. All right, let's jump into it. First, I'm gonna specify I will be using PHP 8.4. And we have SQLite for the database, but we want to use Postgres. So let's update that. Let's say we're gonna be using PGSQL. It's going to be on localhost 127.0.0.1. The port will be 5432 from memory. And let's use a database of obviously this is going to be for development, so it doesn't really matter. Let's just use Postgres for username, password, and the database. And the session will be on Redis. Obviously, if we do this, I do believe it will fail. Yep, as expected, because we don't have Redis. We're not connected to Redis yet. The broadcast connection, later we might be using Reverb, but I'm thinking for broadcasting we might be using something else, but for the time being, let's keep going. For the queue connection, it's going to be all right. What's happening with PHP Storm? I think it's stuck somehow. Yep. The queue connection will be Redis as well. The cache store will be Redis for now, but in production we might be using memcache Redis, don't need a password for development. Mail, for the local development, we'll be using Mailpit. So let's jump into creating a services. So docker compose.yaml. We're going to have services of Postgres with image of, I'm going to be using Postgres actually. All right, so let's use Postgres of I think 16.3 Alpine. I'm not sure if this one is compatible with ARM architecture, but let's wait and see. Ports 5432. We're going to have a volume of PG data. Let's use a named volume. The restart will be unless stopped, and the environments, which we need Postgres user, Postgres password, and DB, which we will bring from sorry, which we will get from the same .env. So database, DB username, and DB password. Of course, when we deploy for production, it's going to be totally different story, but for the development, this is more than enough. What else do we need for Postgres? That's pretty much. What else do we need? I'm not going to be using pgadmin because I will be using the database plugin for PHP Storm. But if you want an interface to manage the database or monitor and work with the database, we can use pgadmin. We need Redis, and the image will be Redis 7 Alpine. The ports 6379, which is the default 6379. Yes. Not sure if we're going to need data, but let's get a unless stopped, and I do believe we need a command to start Redis server. That should be more than enough. Mailpits for capturing emails. We're going to be using Mailpit later. Is it Mailpit or Mailtrap? Let's try Mailpit for now. I do believe it is 8025 and 1025 for the ports. Restart unless stopped, obviously, and that should be enough for the developments. Let's add the named variables, and let's see if this is going to start. Docker compose up with a attached console. Denied for Mailpits. I think it might be Mailpit or Mailtrap. It is probably the name is wrong, which is as we expected. So let's up again. All right, so Postgres requested image platform is Linux AMD 64. And I'm working on a Mac with ARM architecture, but let's check Docker Compose PS. It seems to be healthy for the time being, so Let's create a data source for Postgres, and we use Postgres for password, username. Let's test the connection. Things to be in order. Obviously, we don't have tables beside the default tables that created with Postgres itself. Let's do a PHP artisan migrate. Let's have a look. Seems to be in order. Let's refresh here. Everything seems to be working fine. All right, so that's for these services. Let's check with localhost, and I think it's 8025. So Melpit was working fine, and for Redis should be working fine now. Beautiful, as planned. All right, so let's jump into preparing filaments. Obviously, all those steps doesn't have to be in this specific order. Depends on the way you're making it. I'm going to install the full panel, not just individual components. So let's require filaments. And let's install panels. And let's give it a name of dashboard for the time being. We already gave them the star. All right, so we can create user, but I don't want to for the time being. Let's publish the configuration, because in case I want to change or activate actually the broadcasting using echo and reverb, so I can activate it from here, but I'm not going to do that right now. Let's go to customization. Let's do a custom theme, because we're going to be using few plugins that require or depends on a custom theme. And the beauty with the new make filament theme, it also auto register that in the Vite. Okay, so we used to manually register the assets, the theme assets, and what it actually created is a filament folder, dashboard folder, and that refers to the panel that we just created. Obviously, if you have multiple panels, aka multiple dashboards, you will have multiple folders here, and each one will have its own theme.css. And in this case, you can have multiple themes with different styles. All right, so if we go to our dashboard, it's going to be there. Beautiful. All right, so next thing, I want to bring in some assets. So let's create a folder for the images, and let's go to our Finder, and I do believe it's in here. So let's copy. It's just a logo and a fav icon for the application. Nothing special about it. It's a pre-designed PNGs, but again, later we might change the style. All right, so now if I want to register certain options for the filament provider, obviously this is one of the auto-generated theme registration which we used to do manually. Again, it points to resources, CSS folder, and then filaments, and then the specific panel we just generated, and under that there will be the theme.css, and this is going to be registered per panel. All right, so now colors. I don't want to register colors in here. Instead, I'm going to be making a specific provider. So PHP artisan make provider, CrewSync provider. Okay, and with that, let's go to the providers, and we find our providers here. And in the boot, I will be using, what is it? Filament, what is it? Registrar or filament? Let's get it from, don't remember, what is it called? Let's find it out in here. So creating custom theme, changing colors, let's go colors. Yep, filament color colon register. So it is filament color register in array. Alright, so for the primary, I'm going to use indigo, and we need to obviously import from filament colors. For the gray, I'm going to use gray. For success, I'm going to use teal. For warning, I'm going to be using, and for the danger, I'm going to be using rose, I think. I'm going to register secondary as well, which will be of sky, and the info, which also going to be, let's do blue for the time being, and later we decide. All right, so this is going to be it. Let's go back to, let's move this up a bit, and under theme, let's do the brand logo, which will be coming from images, and what did we call it? CrewSync light. So is it one word? Yeah, CrewSync light.png. This is a the generic, but for the dark mode brand logo, we're going to be using the dark. It's a bit small, but let's continue for the time being. Fav icon is going to be fav icon, and then the brand logo height. Let's see if we do 2.5 rem for the time being. Let's see how that seems to be reasonable. All right, the other thing I want to do here is the font. So let's register font Poppins. Okay, now let's create a filament user. So PHP artisan make filament user. It's going to be my name. I think we're going to be changing the user fields after. For the time being, let's just keep going. And okay, so we need to update our URL as well. So it's https crewsync.test. and log in. And password is password, I think. Yeah, no. All right, that looks fine. All right, I want to have a full width for the content. So after the font, let's see, maximum, is it? Yeah, maximum content with a width of full. All right, so just the full content, full width content. I don't want the top bar. All right, so I'm going to disable the top bar and use the new design. I want the sidebar to be collapsible on desktop. So sidebar collapsible on desktop, but I don't want it to be fully collapsible. I still want to keep the icon. All right, next, let's change the icons. So let's go to plugins, and I want to install this plugin, which enables us to install most of the blade icons and then generate an enums to use those icons. Okay, and let's generate the icons. Would you like to install a package? Yeah, I'm going to install teeny icons. And do you want to continue with the installation? Obviously, yes. All right, so now let's generate the enum, and I'm going to use app enums icons. So the default, I'm going to keep the name, and we have the icons. All right, now I want to customize the dashboard. So I'm going to create a class in a folder for filament. So filaments, under filaments, I'm going to create pages, and under pages I'm going to create a PHP class of app dashboard. So I don't want to confuse the names, and I will inherit from the dashboard that already comes from, I extend dashboard from filament itself. And in here, rather than using dashboard, I'm going to use app dashboard, the newly created. There won't be any changes right now, but I want to change the icon. So navigation icon is going to come from teeny icons using home. This one. All right, now for the icon size, it's too big to my liking, so we will go to resources, filaments, and in here we're going to resize the icon. First, let's find out the class name, which is fi-icon, and if we do height of 16 pixel or 1 rem, yeah, 1 rem, 2 rems too big, 1.5, yeah, 1 is the go. All right, so it dot fi icon, and the height will be 1 rem. Obviously we need to npm run, we need to build those assets, the newly created And that should be good. Okay, awesome. And later we will continue customization. I'm just laying the foundations for it. All right, now what else do we need to do? We need to install roles and permissions. So let's use Spady package, Spady permissions, and I misspelled Spady, but that's fine. Installation in Laravel. So let's composer requires Spady permission. And let's publish the migration and configuration. And with that, we can just migrate. So PHP artisan migrate. Okay, let's refresh. Everything seems to be in order. Now, for permissions, probably I won't go too heavy on permissions yet, but I do need a seeder for the main role. So PHP artisan make db seed called app role seeder. There are no commands defined make db. So make seed. And so seeder, app role seeder in here. First, I want to grab the permission registrar class that comes from Spady package. All right, so I don't need this, and clear the cached, and then I do need to define an enum. All right, so let's create a PHP artisan make enum for the app role, and make enum for the app role. Okay, and the app role, which will return a string type. And this is going to also be used in filaments. Let's deal with that later. So case super admin. All right, so oh my god, super admin, case admin, and case client, and case employee. All right, so client and employee. Now I can go for each of the app role cases as a role, and I will create the role with that name. And obviously I'm going to use the role model from the package itself. All right, so now with the database seeder, I don't want to use the user factory yet, but I need to call an array. I'm quite confident we're going to be creating more seeders, and then PHP artisan db seed. All right, so let's check on that, and let's go to roles, and everything seems to be in order. So super admin, admin client, beautiful. All right, now let's create a trait for the enums, because I will later be implementing has label. Okay, so has label required to implement the get label, and with that all I'm gonna be doing is returning value. So rather than writing this in every enum I will be creating. Let's create a trait for it. So PHP artisan make trait, and I don't believe we have a traits folder, so let's create a trait folder and let's create a trait for the app enum. With that app enum is the one will return or will implement the method, and in here all I'm going to use app enum. Okay, now there will be a shared migrations. Okay, so with that shared migrations, I'm going to be having some JSONB fields that I will be using for different purposes. So I don't want, and it's going to be applicable to every model. So rather than repeating myself in every migration file, I'm going to create a utility class. So PHP artisan make, not make. So PHP artisan make a class under utils folder, and I will call it app migration. All right, so if I open app migration, it's going to be a static method. So public static function migrate, and it will not return anything, so it's going to be void, and I will be taking the blueprint table that I will be passing in every migration file. So what do I need to create? I need to create a JSONB for meta. Okay, and this one is going to be nullable because it's not really super required. And another JSONB for automations. All right. And if you wonder what automations are, we talked about it in the previous episode, but it's going to be a way for me to track the actions and the activities that is happening in terms of activating any automations. I will also have a general JSONB for attachments, and the reason for this is because it's unclear in some areas what type of attachments will be, and every model will be using soft deletes, and every model will be using timestamps. I do believe timestamps is already auto created or auto added. So do I want to still? Well, let's remove it from our own models, from our own migration, and let's just check it in here. So what we're going to use is app migration migrate, and I'm going to pass the table in which will and for the down it drops the whole table, so there is no need for individual. So also I will be tracking foreign ID for the user model in a different style. So I will track created by, okay, updated by, and deleted by. So for the time being, I'm gonna make it nullable, but it will be controlled from the business logic. So meta automations, attachments, created by, updated by, and deleted by, soft deletes, and the timestamps. All right, so let's do a quick check. PHP artisan migrate fresh, just in case everything seems to be as expected. So let's check that one. All right, deleted by, created by, everything seems to be working fine. Now, I will need, while I will be working on those fields, so probably gonna be needing a casting, right? So we're gonna need to cast meta automations attachments into array, right? We're gonna need methods, but rather than repeating myself, why don't I, rather than inheriting from Laravel model, this is not going to be applicable to the user model, but more is going to be applicable to every other model. So first thing first, let's use as roles, okay? For fillables, we will allow for meta and automations and attachments. For the casts, we will cast meta to an array. We're going to cast automations into array and attachments into array. We also, created at. We're going to cast it to date time, updated at, and deleted at. Not that Laravel is not doing that already, but let's do that. All right, now those methods so belongs to created by. Okay, so that's going to be the user class itself, and the field is going to be created by, belongs to updated by, which also going to be for the user class and the field updated by, and belongs to deleted by, which will also be the user class deleted by the key. But for every other model, I'm going to need a PHP artisan make class, and let's put it under core folder, and let's call it app model. So the app model is the one that I will inherit from the Eloquent model. In here, I'm going to need to override the casts, not cats. And before I return anything, I need to still allow every other model to have its own casts array. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to merge. Okay, I'm going to merge this casts, okay, with the new array, or with this custom array, which will have meta as array, automations as array, and the attachment as array as well. So in this case, the individual models will also have their own casts array, and then we just merge it with those ones. And we're going to apply the same thing with the fillables, okay? The same exact thing with the fillables. So we are going to merge this fillable, all right? So the variable, not the function, and this one will also return an array. And with that one, we're going to merge meta automations attachments, deleted at, created by, and deleted by, and updated by. So this looks a bit ugly for some reason, but let's fix that. If there is anything else we're going to have as a shared model, we can also Sorry, we can also add it here. Now, belongs to created by, which will come from the user model class and the field created by. So all those models will have those methods. So I don't have to rewrite it for every other method. I'm going to have updated by and deleted by. Let's make sure deleted at and created at also date time and updated at also date time. Just for an extra confirmation, All right. So what else do we need? We've created our app model. We created our app enum. We created the migration, and we prepared as much as we can. Let's continue with our first model. And did we create? No, I think we did a migration. Yep. So let's create PHP artisan make filament user with that name. And actually, no, before we create models, let's customize the profile. So let's customize the profile. All right, first I need to tell Filament that I want the profile. So in the provider of that dashboard, where let's put it next to login, let's use, hey, I do want a profile. And now if I click on that, it will use that mini little form. With that, there is simple. I want to say false. Okay, I don't want to use a simple. I want to use a full-fledged page. Now, with the user and the email, with the password and the email, I'm not going to be allowing to change it for the time being, okay? Because remember, this is going to be our super admin dashboard. It's not the end user dashboard, even though it possibly can, to be honest with you. Why? I don't see a reason why not to, because we can create custom pages, we can create custom components, we can customize almost everything. So probably this is something to consider later. But first, I want to use a custom edit profile page, and to find out where the page is coming, it is coming from edit profile, this one, okay? And this is the edit profile page that is provided by Filament. So if I inherit from that one, so if I go to pages and I create another PHP class, and I will say app edit profile, okay? And in here I inherit, so I extend that edit profile page that is coming from Filament auth pages. You know what? Let's follow the same path. So under Filament, what was it? Filament auth pages, right? So Filament auth pages as the name space suggests. So Filament auth, and in here I'm gonna create pages and move our newly created page to that. And in here, when I say profile, I will use the app edit profile class rather than using the default. Obviously, no changes in here. But in here, if I override what do we need to override? We need to override is it form? I think it's phone. Yep, form. So let's override the form. And if we return the schema components, is it components? Yeah. Since I'm returning an empty array, that should work, which means there is nothing. But if I, let's say, for example, for the sake of argument, I will add a section, and in this section, I will have a schema of text input that has the name. All right, and that's going to be a required. All right, so that should be as intended. And if I change my name and I save, if I refresh, that reflected here. Perfect. Let's fix that. All right, now I do have, hold on, why the name? Probably is it inheriting from special get name form component that is a text input or the focus. Nothing special about it. Is it layouts? All right, so where is the form being used? All right, so that's the save method. This one is the fill form method. So that's the only place it's being called. I will worry about that later anyway, since I'm not really, I'm not going to be doing anything to it right now. Okay. All right, let's make our first model. So PHP artisan make model, and the model for, since we're creating a scheduler, all right, so we're going to need a roster, okay, and a roster is going to be the time-gated confirmed or unconfirmed or draft roster that will have a roster entry into it, right? So roster and roster entry, and the roster and the roster entry at some point will, once the employee go to the job and execute the job, it will be converted into a timesheet, right? And the timesheet is the completed work, which will be extracted from the roster. And in this case, we're going to have a timesheet entry as well as the roster entry. All right, so those two, for each one, I will inherit from the app model that we created. All right, so we're not inheriting from model anymore. So extend our app model. Let's clean up in here as well. Let's clean up in here as well. And with the timesheet, again, app model. And the timesheet entry, which will be the same app model, just like that. Now, thinking from the relationship perspective, rosters doesn't have, we're not going to have a timesheet because that will come from the migration, just like that, the one that we created. And with that one, with that one, and with that one too. All right, go back to the perspective of the relationships. So roster will have a foreign ID for the user. All right. The timesheet, which will also be for the user. All right. So we created that relationship, but also the timesheet. Yeah, timesheet doesn't have a relationship with the roster, but the timesheet entry, which will have, sorry. Right, so missed call. If it's important, they will call back. Foreign ID. So timesheet entry obviously needs to belong to the timesheet, and perfect. That's what I was referring to, is that the timesheet entry is picking up from the roster entry, and the roster entry is the one that will be confirmed as a completed job. And if you just give me a second. Hey, Adam. I'm good, good. All right, sorry about that. Okay. So where we at, we said timesheet entry belongs to a timesheet, obviously. And the timesheet entry itself is also picking up its data from the roster entry. Roster, which will belong to a user, the roster entry, which should belong to a roster, obviously. And that's it for the relationships for the time being. Okay, so we're not going to be that seems all right. Yeah. Okay. So now, let's go to the roster, and it belongs to the user. All right. So it belongs to the user as a user, and it has many roster entries with the model user, roster entry. That makes the roster entry belongs to the roster, and it also has many timesheet entries. So timesheet will also belongs to the user class, and it has many timesheet entries with the timesheet entry. And the timesheet entry, which in this case, it belongs to the timesheet all right, so it belongs to the timesheet, but also it belongs to the roster entry. Cool. Now the timesheet entry, if for whatever reason we need to figure out the user for that timesheet entry, because later we will be generating invoices, blah, blah, blah. So it will belongs to, or is it has many through. No. Let's go to the user now. So the user will has many rosters with the roster class, and it will has many timesheets with the timesheets, but it will has many through roster entries, right? So the related is going to be roster entry class, and it will be through the roster class. And since I haven't changed any of those default keys, I don't need to specify them. And let's apply the same principle, which has many timesheet entries through the timesheet, which again, we haven't changed the default columns. Therefore, I don't need to specify them. All right. And for each of those models, since they're inheriting from the app model, all right, I don't need to rewrite the except we do need to specify the fillables, okay, and there will be some special casts, right? So let's create some enum. So PHP artisan make enum, which will be the roster status, okay? And roster, do we need to lock the full roster, or do we lock? Because the roster will never be locked, right? The roster will always be a roster from a time frame. So it's going to be starting from, ending, start at, end at, which means it doesn't need a status. But if all the roster entries are confirmed, that makes the roster is confirmed. So let's go with a roster status. So with the roster status, it will be of a string type, and it will implement has a label. Okay, and since I have an app enum trait, I can use that, and it will be a draft to start with, and a published. So yeah, it's either draft or published, but if the time frame of it has elapsed, as in the roster was completed or incomplete, it doesn't matter, then it will be an archive, right? All right, so since we also using filament, let's do has color to it and override the get color. And with that one, if I return match this one, so being a draft, it will be a primary or info. Let's use info for the time being. And when it's published, it will be success. And when it's archived, it will be warning. I don't need it to be danger because it's not deleted, right? And let's do has icon as well. Has icon, also an interface coming from filament. And with that one, let's return let's see what icons do we have. So blade icons. And the icon the icon package was Teeny, the one that we installed, but we can install more if we want. We can install any of those ones because we use that plugin. So with the draft, let's use pencil. TNI pen O. All right. So teeny icons, which we said pen O, is it? Yeah, pen O. And when it's published, let's use a tick with a circle. So teeny icons, a tick with a circle. And when it's archived, let's see an archive. So teeny icons, archive. Okay, so that means in the roster, create rosters table, we're going to have an enum. So table enum with the key status, and the values will come from the roster status values. Okay, and values, we don't have that yet, do we? Because we haven't written a new to coding. Unfortunately, this is not like a beginner's course or anything. This is just live coding. There is heaps of courses and tutorials about Laravel, filaments, you name it, almost everything, you know. So alrighty, so what do we need to do here? First of all, before I go, let's do a draft, but I need to grab the value of the draft. And with the app enum, let's do a public static function of values, okay? And with that one, I want to return array column from the self cases, all right? And I want to grab the value key from the cases, okay? So if you think about the self cases, all right, that will give us the enumeration, the enum that we are working with in a key and a value, right? What array column will do is will enumerate on every row in that array, which is in this case cases, okay, because cases will return the enum in an array form with the key and a value, and then it will apply the value to extract the actual value. All right. So if you have a special key name, you can type it in here, but I want to actually grab the value of every key. And in this case, that's what array column will do. And in here, since I am using the app enum trait on my roster status enum, I can call values, which will return to me the array of those values. That means in the roster model, so in my roster model, I need to have casts, okay? And what do I need to cast? I need to cast the status to the roster status class. And also I need to make sure the status is also a fillable. And what else do we have in the rosters? And the user ID also a part of the fillable. And since we inheriting from the app model, the other casts will be applicable and the other fillables will be applicable. And since we're using merging the actual fillable, which means it will merge this array with the fillables, and it will be doing the same with the casts. Now the timesheet entry also will have a status. So, sorry, the roster entry, which will have, it will be of a string type, it will implement as label, and it will be using app enum, and it will be a case of, yeah, it will be pending and approved, and it will be of a case completed, and it will be a case of cancelled. It will have a no. So the admin will assign the roster entry to the employee, and it will be a pending, as in it hasn't been confirmed yet. So rather than being approved, it will be confirmed. All right. And then since it's confirmed, or that will be in the timesheet entry, we do need to have it. And I think that is going to be a different status, right? because it's either pending, as in the admin has created the roster entry for the user, okay? The communication happened between the admin team and the employees, then it will be either confirmed or it will be cancelled, right? So I will pending, confirmed, or if it's not confirmed, it will be cancelled, and the employee will go and handle the actual job in which we'll create a timesheet entry. So it will always be confirmed, and that's it. We don't need to switch that. If we need it, we can always come back and handle that. So it will has a color as well. So implement has color, and we want to return match this with the pending. It's warning. If it's confirmed, success. If it's cancelled, it will be danger. All right. With has icon as well. And again, we're going to return match this, and the cases when pending clock. What is this clock? How does it look like? Yeah, I like that. Clock O. And self confirmed, we will give it a check. Oh, is it? Or tick circle O. And if it's cancelled, X circle O. So that's for the timesheet entry. So let's go to roster entry, which will have an enum of type, table of type enum, which will have a status, and that will be time roster entry type status values with the value status. That means with the roster entry, we cast the status to a roster entry status, and we need to make sure status is fillable and roster ID is also fillable. Cool. All right, so timesheet entry and timesheet will follow the same logic. And in this case, if we are, but I don't want to merge the statuses that belongs to the roster with the timesheet, even if that's going to be a bit of duplicate coding. But I need an individual control over each model. All right, so yeah, I will handle that individually, even if it's a bit of duplicates. So timesheet status and timesheet entry status, even though that the timesheet entry is going to have a different value. So yeah, let's continue. Timesheet status, which also going to be of type string. It will implement has label. We're going to use app enum, and the cases will be obviously a draft, and it will be of case of submitted. All right, so draft is when the employee keep working and the system will keep registering to that timesheet. All right, and then once they finish with it, they will submit it, aka will be handled by the admin team, and the admin team will finalize its data, so it will be of type status completed. All right, not approved, completed. Approval will be on the individual. All right, so which also has a color. All right, and we're going to return match this with draft being info submitted as a no. All right, so completed is the success. Draft info submitted is a warning. Warning because we want to bring the attention to its importance. All right. And also we're going to have as icon. So with the has icon, it's going to be the same logic. Return match this. Submitted and completed will be of a tick. Okay, beautiful. So now with the timesheet, I can have a table with a column type of enum called status with the timesheet status values, and the default is going to be draft. Same logic will be applicable to the timesheet entry status. Now this one, which also going to have the same logic, so use app enum, and it's going to have a case of it's not going to be a pending. Sorry, it's not going to be a draft, right? Because once you log in, once you clock in the job, it will create the timesheet entry. So it will not be draft. It will be pending. When the when the employee clocks out, it will be a completed. But that raises the question now: how do we consider that as a No, it's not. It will not be completed. It will be submitted. And when it's submitted, then the admin team will be approving or rejecting that. When they reject it, it will close it down and they will have to create a new timesheet entry by the admin team. So has color and has icon. So get color, return match this. Pending is warning. Actually, that's an info. Submitted is a warning. Approved is a success. Rejected is a danger. And with the icons, approved is a tick. Rejected is a circle. Clock O. How about if we use the clock, which will be the filled version? All right. So this is when it's pending, and this is when it's submitted. So filled, unfilled. Alrighty. So timesheet entry. So create timesheet entries, which will now have the table. Enum of status with the timesheet entry status values, and the default is going to be of pending. All right. Okay. Now let's back up a little. Let's go to create rosters table. Now, obviously the roster will need to have a timestamp of start at, all right. And start at can be nullable because just in case if the admin, because what we want is the admin create the rosters, all right, but if they haven't decided yet, oh, actually, no, they will have to. They need to, right? Otherwise, it will not be considered. The end at, it can be of nullable, right? So at least they need to have the roster start date. And also, to prevent any extra issues, I will control that. So I will let that be nullable. And I will control that through the business logic rather than the database layer. So the whole control, I will give it to the business logic layer, not to the database layer. So the timesheet, the roster will have a timestamp of start at. It will start from this date, and it will. You know what? I don't need this one to have a time. It will be start. Okay, it will be a date, so it will start on and end, starts on and ends on as a date. But the roster entry, okay, so the roster entry, that one will have the timestamp. Okay, so they will need to start from timestamp, that date, that hour. So in this case, starts at and then ends at, which also going to be a timestamp, and they both have to be required because there is no question about it. The roster entry will have to state you will be working from this time to this time on that date. Roster, it can be a bit of preparation, but the entry itself, the employee will definitely need to know when exactly they start, when exactly they end. And that will reflect on the timesheets as well. So the timesheets, which also going to have the exact same field, but going to be on a different usage. So create timesheet entry. Now the timesheet entry, which also it picks up its data from the roster entry itself. Therefore, it will have a planned starts at, okay, and planned ends at. So this one, let's make a note. This is what is in the roster entry itself, okay? So what does the roster entry says? That's what's the value in here. This is the actual. Okay, this is the actual of what did the actual employee did. So when they clock in, all right, it will capture that in that field. And in this case, if there is a huge gap between when they are planned to start and when they actually started, is also captured in here. Now, this can also have a double of hours worked. All right, so let's start with 0. All right, so this one is based on the All right, so we have a good question. It says I have a question. I just learned C++. What next? I already learned JavaScript, Java, C++, CSS, HTML, Python, Scratch, and Unity engine. Well, you definitely learned a few languages, but you need to jump into design patterns, not graphic design, software design patterns, and maybe some software development methodologies. Pick up a little bit of DevOps as well, not too deep, but just a little, because that's also good to know. And it's a bit required as well, to be honest with you. Alrighty, so what is the hours worked for that timesheet entry? But also, why not we have that here as well as hours? All right, so as hours, not as a, because it would be good if I'm looking at my timesheet, or if I'm looking at my roster, sorry, and I can see what are my planned hours for that roster. Okay, because that roster could be a 1 week roster, or could be a 2 weeks roster, or a month roster, or whatever you plan to do as an employee, and operations as well. And again, we can keep adding as we go, as we see fit. All right, so we are 1 hour and 30 minutes. All right, so let's finish this one and take a break, and we come back. So, right, so it's more about those ones. Now, there has to be some way of tracking maybe comments, tracking some notes. But if I create a notes table or a comments table, that might grow really big. But for the individual entity, or for the individual object, there won't be too many. So it's better for me to create. It's better for me to create on the model, like on the actual model, comments and notes and so on and so forth, right? Yeah. What are we trying to make? We are actually making a complete platform from A to Z using Flutter and Laravel for the backend. So I will allow everything to have comments and everything to have notes individually. So let's complete this one. Comments, maybe notes. And while we are here, I might also do a tasks. Just in case if there is something I need to let the user do. So if you can pick up on the pattern I'm making, it's a mix between relational database, but also I am trying to minimize the amount of external tables and their inward relationships by using as much as I can on the table itself to mimic the somehow NoSQL pattern, but it's not in NoSQL pattern, so don't get confused with that one. That's why I'm using the JSONB, because JSONB also I can do some indexing, I can do searching, and I can do an extra functionalities over using just JSON. All right. If you see what I'm going with this one. So it's a mixture between the two patterns. So I might also be able to track the activities, because if I want to create an activity per system, all right, that will make it really, really big. Therefore, I will create those in here. So that means in my app model, I need to add those to my cast. So we said comments as an array, and we have notes, tasks, and activities, which will be an array. And also they need to be within the fillables. So comments, fillables, notes, tasks, and activities also part of the fillables. So in this case, I can do a utility function, all right? There's a beautiful package from Spady to handle the activities, but that's more of a system-wide activities. I'm not talking about the system-wide activities. I'm talking about the specific model activities, or model tasks, and so on and so forth. All right, so that's that. And then created by, updated by, that's also a shared one. So we go back into here. Now on the reverse side, for every model, since I already know created by, updated by the user itself, I need to know what are they creating as well. So created by, I need to know they has many time, or created time sheets. All right, so they will have timesheet class with the key created by, and also has many created rosters. Okay, and then we'll have a roster model, and the key is obviously, and we'll have many created timesheet entries. All right, and that's going to be a timesheet entry class with the key created by. With the rosters, which will also has many created roster entries, which also be a roster entry with the key created by. Obviously, this user model will grow really big. Might be a good idea to extract that to its own trait. So let's go with a PHP artist and make a trait with being called user created. Okay, let's call it that. Okay, which means I can get the created object, so created timesheet and created times entry, and go with the created user trait and check them in here. And also go with created rosters and created timesheets as well. And I can just use that trait in here with user created trait. Just so I don't have so much in the user model. All right, and now I can tell what are the rosters created by, and how many they create, and how many created, and so on and so forth. Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks for the subscription. All right, now so that will keep growing with us, this trait, so we'll leave it alone for the time being, and let's review now everything we've done. So in the database, migration, rosters. Okay, with the rosters, we know who is the user ID that it belongs to. We know the status of the roster. We know when it starts and when it ends. We have some comments, we have some notes and activities, and so on and so forth. With the roster model, we did the casts to, here we go. Now that's what we forgot, the casting. Okay, we still need to cast the starts on, or starts on as a date. Okay, and the ends on as a date as well. And then in the fillables, we need to have the starts on and we need to have the ends on. Beautiful. Now with the rosters entries, so roster entry, we know the entry belongs to which user and also what is the status, and we did the casts and we did the fillable. Starts at this time, which will be a date time, this one, all right, and ends at also a date time, and the hours doesn't need a casting, but it definitely need a fillable. So starts at, ends at, and notes. No, note is part of the shared. So the hours. Beautiful. Timesheet and timesheet. Okay, well then. So timesheet, we need casts, obviously, which include the status, which will go to type time status class, and a starts on, which will be a date, ends on, which also be a date. Then my fillables will be status, obviously, user ID, starts on and ends on. And we have the relationships to it as well, so we are good. Timesheet entry. So, timesheet entry, we need casting to the status as well, which will be a timesheet entry status. We need the start at, which will be a timestamp of date time. Ends at, which also a date time. And the planned, okay, we need to, the planned starts at with the planned ends at. Hours doesn't need to be a casting, but status needs to be in the fillable. Timesheet ID, roster entry ID, starts at, ends at, planned starts, and obviously hours worked. And with that, should be, finger crossed, if I do PHP artisan migrate fresh. Everything works as intended. Beautiful. It works as is. And I now can recreate PHP artisan make filament user and whatever email and password. Now I should be able to start adding resources. All right. So let's do that. The first resource, the top level resources will be just timesheets, rosters, employees, and clients. All right. So the user resource will be multiple types of user resource, right? Because we need to grab. Because I don't want to have. Hold on. If we have a one single big table of users and then multiple tabs to differentiate each user type, it may not look. It's not gonna look good, right? But for the time being, I'm not gonna worry about it anyway. So PHP artisan make filament resource. Before I do with the resource, I just remember that the models we need to use soft deletes. Otherwise, we can have a problem, right? So, filament resource for the roster. And the roster doesn't have a name or anything, so we're going to use the ID. And do we need to create a read-only page? Let's do that. Do we want to generate configuration from the database column? No, I want to have full control. And I will do a timesheet. I think we need to use -- soft deletes. Again, this is going to be an ID. I do want a view, and I'm not going to load it. So let's see what's the difference in here. Timesheets, resources. Where does it specify it uses soft delete? So in here, this is the scope. It does, because I think it actually detects the model, and since it sees it uses soft delete, it will auto create. So yeah, I think that -- soft -- deletes it's not always required. If you already have it, use soft delete. All right. Anyway, so now we come up with two new menu items, and let's pick up on icons. So time. There is no time. What about clock? I like the concept of using a clock. Let's see what other icon packages offer. This might be good for so if I maybe this is a this is for the timesheet, because timesheet also relate to money, to the payout, and the cog maybe to the roster, signifying the planning side of things. So this comes from which package? This is Tabla. So now if I do install, if I install a Tabla icons, do you want to proceed with the installation? Yes, obviously. And I do believe we need to generate as well. And we need to generate for the Tabla because Tini is already done. All right, so this is our roster. We said roster will have a Tabla icon of, what did we choose? Clock cog. So clock cog. Yeah, well, let's see how it looks like in reality. Yeah, looks all right. And the other one we said it's clock what? So clock in Tabla, clock dollar, obviously. But again, we can change it later if we find out it's not looking nice. So Tabla, what did we say? Clock dollar. Yeah, that's all right. And if I close the menu like this, rosters, timesheet, and dashboard. Beautiful. All right. So before we start building forms, let's take a rest since we are about to hit the 2 hours mark. So let's take a 15 minutes rest, and then I will see you later, and we continue from where we left off. Thanks again. Looking forward to see you. Have a good one.